It is a biting cold January morning in 1901, and inside a quiet room in Haverhill, Massachusetts, a doctor named Duncan McDougall is waiting for a man to die. He has constructed a specialized bed, a sprawling, delicate scale sensitive enough to measure the weight of a single silver dollar. The patient is suffering from terminal tuberculosis, fading into the final stillness. McDougall isn't interested in the man's final words or his legacy, he is looking for a number. He believes that the moment the spark of life vanishes, the physical body must become lighter. He believes the soul has mass. When the man finally exhales his last breath, the beam of the scale drops with a faint, metallic click. McDougall records a loss of exactly 21 grams. It is a haunting, evocative story that has permeated our culture for over a century, suggesting that death is a clean, measurable exit where something essential simply leaves the building. But there is a massive paradox sitting in that room that McDougall completely missed. While he was focused on what might have left the body, he ignored the fact that the body itself was becoming more active than it had been in years. At the moment of clinical death, you aren't just a cooling lump of matter. You are a frantic, hyperactive ecosystem undergoing a violent and organized transformation. You are officially dead, yet your cells are performing tasks they have never attempted before. The myths are usually more comforting than the truth. Before we can understand the high-speed machinery that kicks in after your heart stops, we have to dismantle the folklore we've built around the end of life. Most people grew up hearing that your hair and fingernails continue to grow for days or even weeks after you've been buried. It's a creepy, vivid image that suggests a lingering, slow-motion life. But biologically, it's an impossibility. Hair and nail growth require a complex hormonal cascade and a steady supply of glucose and oxygen to fuel the production of keratin. When your heart stops, that supply line is cut instantly. The reason why hair and nails appear longer on a corpse is much more grounded in the physical reality of dehydration. As the moisture leaves your body, your skin begins to shrink and retract. This pulls back the tissue around the hair follicles and the nail beds, exposing more of the shaft and the root that was already there. It is an illusion of growth caused by the reality of decay. Then there is the myth of the flat line. In movies, the heart stops, the monitor emits a long beep, and it's over. But the body doesn't have a master off switch. It's more like a massive skyscraper where the power has been cut at the main transformer, but thousands of individual rooms still have backup batteries, hidden generators, and emergency lights that stay on for hours. We've been taught to see death as an event, but science has increasingly proven that it is a long, staggered process. Even McDougall's famous 21 grams was quickly debunked as a combination of sweating, lung evaporation, and the inherent inaccuracy of his scales. The truth is that nothing physical leaves you. Instead, everything you are begins to turn inward. The clock is still ticking inside your cells. At second zero, your heart stops its rhythmic squeezing. The 5 liters of blood that have been circling your frame for decades suddenly come to a dead halt. Gravity, which you have fought every second of your waking life, finally wins. Your blood begins to pool in the lowest parts of your body, a process called livor mortis, turning the skin purple and mottled where it presses against the ground. But inside your 37 trillion cells, the situation is one of pure, unadulterated panic. Your cells are tiny engines that run on a very specific fuel called ATP, which is produced using oxygen. When the oxygen stops arriving, these engines don't just stop, they begin to overheat and break down. This is the start of autolysis, also known as self-digestion. Think of your cells as small containers filled with digestive enzymes. These enzymes are incredibly powerful. They are designed to break down proteins and fats, but they are normally kept locked away in sturdy little bags called lysosomes. Without oxygen, the walls of these bags begin to weaken and dissolve. It's a catastrophic failure of containment. The enzymes leak out into the cell itself, and they do exactly what they were built to do. They start digesting everything they touch. Your own chemistry begins to eat you from the inside out. This isn't a random breakdown. It's a systematic dismantling of your biological structure. The brain refuses to go quietly. While your liver and your skin are beginning to melt at a cellular level, your brain is staging a final, desperate protest. For decades, we assumed the brain simply flickered out like a light bulb. But in 2013, a neuroscientist at the University of Michigan named Dima Borjigin discovered something that shocked the scientific community. She was monitoring the brain activity of rats as they underwent cardiac arrest. She expected to see a slow decline into silence. Instead, she saw a massive, coordinated surge of gamma wave activity. Gamma waves are the highest frequency brain waves we have. They are associated with intense focus, high-level information processing, and vivid dreaming. In the 30 seconds after their heart stopped, the rats' brains were more active and more synchronized than they were when they were fully awake and alert. Borjigin repeated this study with human patients in 2023, observing comatose individuals as they were removed from life support. In 2 of the 4 patients, she saw the same thing. A crazy high surge of gamma activity in the temporoparietal-occipital junction. This is a region of the brain specifically linked to visual processing and out-of-body experiences. This discovery reframes the entire experience of dying. It suggests that in the final moments, the brain isn't dying. It is performing its most complex, high-definition internal theater. It's as if the brain, realizing the external world is gone, turns its entire processing power inward to the world of memory and imagination. Your memory might be more durable than bone. This surge of activity might explain the life review that so many survivors of clinical death describe. Dr. Sam Parnia, one of the world's leading experts on resuscitation at NYU Langone, has spent decades interviewing people who were brought back after 30 or 40 minutes of being dead. These aren't people who just fainted. These are people whose hearts had stopped and whose brains had flatlined on traditional monitors. Parnia's AWARE studies found that a significant percentage of these people reported structured, lucid thoughts and incredibly vivid memories. One of the most common reports is a non-judgmental review of every action they had ever taken. It's not just a highlight reel, it's a deep dive into the emotional consequences of their lives. Parnia's research suggests that consciousness may not be instantly extinguished when the heart stops. In fact, he has found that brain cells are actually quite resilient. If they are kept cool and protected from certain chemical surges, they can remain viable for hours. This raises a terrifying but fascinating question. If the brain is still capable of structured thought long after the heart has stopped, where is that consciousness living? Some researchers, like Stuart Hameroff and the Nobel laureate Roger Penrose, have proposed the orchestra or theory, which suggests that consciousness is a quantum process occurring within tiny structures inside our neurons called microtubules. If they are right, then the information that makes you doesn't necessarily disappear when the biological hardware breaks. It might simply change state. The internal timer has already started. While your brain is navigating the quantum edge, your body is dealing with more immediate physical guests. You are never truly alone, even in life. Right now, you are carrying roughly 5 pounds of bacteria in your gut. These billions of microbes are essential for your health, helping you digest food and train your immune system. But they are kept in check by your body's constant maintenance. Your immune system is like a police force that keeps this massive microbial population contained within the walls of your intestines. When you die, the police force goes home. The microbes, no longer restricted, begin to realize that their environment has changed. The temperature is dropping, and the barriers are weakening. They start to migrate. They move from the gut into the blood vessels, using your own circulatory system as a highway to reach every organ in your body. This is the beginning of putrefaction. As these bacteria consume your tissues, they release gases like methane, hydrogen sulfide, and ammonia. This is what causes the body to bloat and produces the distinct, heavy scent of death. But even this process is a form of life. You have transitioned from being a single organism to being a vast, thriving metropolis for billions of other living things. Scientists call this the necrobiome. It is a specific, predictable ecosystem that follows a strict timeline. In fact, forensic entomologists can tell exactly how long someone has been dead by looking at which specific bacteria and insects have moved into the neighborhood. The smell of the end is a very specific chemical. The odor of decay is often described as repulsive, but it is actually a very complex chemical signature. Two of the primary chemicals produced during this stage are aptly named putrescine and cadaverine. These are produced when amino acids break down. To a human, they are a warning sign to stay away, but to the rest of the natural world, they are a dinner bell. This is where the work of people like Bill Bass becomes essential. Bass is the founder of the University of Tennessee's Forensic Anthropology Center, better known as the Body Farm. For decades, researchers there have laid out donated human remains in various conditions, buried, underwater, in the trunks of cars, to study exactly how the body returns to the earth. What they found is that a human body is an incredible source of nutrients. A single decomposing body can change the chemistry of the soil for years, creating a cadaver decomposition island. The nitrogen, phosphorus, and calcium released by your body can cause a sudden, violent burst of plant growth. In the middle of a forest, a spot where a body has rested will often be marked by a circle of vibrant, dark green vegetation that stands out from everything around it. You are literally being recycled into the food chain. The energy that you spent a lifetime accumulating doesn't vanish. It is simply redistributed. The evidence suggests we've been looking at this backward. If we look at death as a biological event, we see a process of breakdown and recycling. But if we look at it as a genetic event, things get even stranger. In 2016, researchers studying zebrafish and mice found that over 1,000 genes actually turned on after the animals were dead. Some of these genes remained active for up to 4 days. These weren't just random genetic glitches. They were specific genes related to stress response, inflammation, and most surprisingly, embryonic development. It's as if the cells, in a final attempt to save the organism, tried to reboot the system using the same genetic instructions that were used to build the body in the first place. The body is literally trying to grow its way out of death. This genetic persistence is even more evident in the case of Henrietta Lacks. In 1951, a woman named Henrietta Lacks died of cervical cancer. But a sample of her cells, taken without her knowledge, possessed a unique mutation that allowed them to divide indefinitely in a laboratory setting. Today, 70 years after her death, there are trillions of HeLa cells growing in labs all over the world. They have been used to develop the polio vaccine, study gene mapping, and test the effects of radiation. In a very real, physical sense, Henrietta Lacks is more alive today than she was when she was breathing. Her genetic information has become a permanent part of the human story. Death is not a wall, but a doorway that takes a long time to walk through. We tend to think of the self as something that requires a heartbeat to exist, but the more we look, the more we see that the self is smeared across time and space. Take the phenomenon of microchimerism. When a woman is pregnant, fetal cells migrate across the placenta and enter her bloodstream, where they can take up residence in her organs, her heart, her lungs, and even her brain. These cells can stay there for decades. If a mother dies, a part of her child is still physically living within her remains. If a child grows old and dies, a part of their mother's original cells might still be tucked away in their bone marrow. We are mosaics of the people who came before us and the people we brought into the world. The boundary between me and not me is incredibly porous, and death doesn't seem to respect it at all. This brings us to the most counterintuitive fact of all. Your body is designed to die so that life can continue. Apoptosis, or programmed cell death, happens every single day inside your body. Your cells are constantly killing themselves to prevent cancer and to make room for new growth. If your cells didn't die, you wouldn't have fingers, you would have webbed paddles, because the cells between your digits have to die during development to separate them. Death is the sculptor that gives life its shape. The big reveal is that you are never actually finished. When you look at all this evidence, the gamma wave surges in the brain, the persistence of consciousness in the aware studies, the rebooting genes, and the eternal life of the HeLa cells, it becomes clear that our definition of death is far too narrow. We have been looking at it through the lens of a 19th century scale, trying to weigh a soul in grams. But life isn't a substance, it's a pattern of energy and information. When a wave crashes on the shore, the water doesn't disappear, the pattern just changes. The energy that powered your thoughts and your heartbeat has been around since the beginning of the universe, and it will be around until the end. You aren't a temporary inhabitant of the universe. You are a way for the universe to look at itself. And the universe is very, very good at keeping track of its information. Whether that information remains conscious in the way we understand it is the final mystery, but the data suggests that the transition is much more profound and much less empty than we ever feared. The myths told us it was a fade to black, but the science tells us it's a surge of light. Think back to that cold morning in 1901 with Duncan McDougall. He was so worried about the 21 grams he thought he was losing that he didn't realize he was standing in a room full of miracles. He didn't see the brain's final symphony or the genetic reboot or the microbial takeover. He saw an end because he didn't know how to look for a transformation. Death isn't the opposite of life, it's the climax of it. It is the moment where every system you've ever owned works together one last time to return you to the source. You have spent your entire life consuming the world, the air, the food, the sunlight, and in the end, you finally give it all back. It is the most honest thing you will ever do. And while the physical machinery will eventually stop, the impact of your life, the information you created, the love you shared, and the very atoms you borrowed, will continue to ripple outward forever. Science has finally caught up to what our ancestors always suspected. You are more than the sum of your parts. So, when you think about what happens next, don't look at the scale. Don't look for a number or a clinical definition. Look at the persistence of the systems around you. Look at the way a single cell can live for 70 years in a lab, or the way a mother carries the cells of her child to her grave. You are part of a continuous, unbreakable chain of existence. The fear of death is usually just the fear of being forgotten, but the very chemistry of your body ensures that you are impossible to forget. You are written into the soil, the air, and the genetic code of the future. You are a permanent feature of reality. The end isn't a void, it's a homecoming. The question isn't whether there is life after death, but how much life is contained within the process of dying itself. Every study we've conducted, from the body farm to the ICU, shows that the transition is busy, purposeful, and surprisingly organized. It is not a chaotic breakdown, it is a final, elegant performance. The brain surges to give you a final perspective, the cells open up to return their nutrients to the earth, and the genes flicker on to try one last save. It is a masterpiece of biological engineering. And if the universe went to this much trouble to design such a complex exit strategy, it's highly unlikely that the destination is just nothingness. We are part of a cycle that is far older and far more intelligent than our individual fears. The truth is much more resilient than the folklore. You might find yourself wondering why this matters now, while you are still very much alive and breathing. It matters because how we view the end dictates how we live the beginning. If death is just a cold 21-gram loss, then life is just a countdown. But if death is a transition, a surge, and a recycling of energy into something new, then every moment is an investment in that legacy. You are currently building the information that your brain will one day review. You are accumulating the nutrients that will one day feed a forest. You are creating the memories that will ripple through the people you leave behind. You are a work in progress that never actually reaches a final draft. The paradox of the cold room in 1901 is the same paradox we face today. We are so focused on what we might lose that we forget to see what we are. You are a collection of stardust that has gained consciousness for a brief, flickering moment. That is the real miracle. And when that moment ends, the stardust doesn't go away. It just moves on to its next assignment. The journey doesn't end with a flat line. It ends with a transformation. We are all just walking each other home, and the home we are walking toward is the same one we've been a part of since the very first star exploded. Do you ever feel like you've been here before, or that a part of you belongs to something much older than your birthday? That's not just a feeling, it's a biological fact. Your atoms have been through countless deaths before they became you, and they will go through countless more after you're gone. This deep dive into the science of the end is just one way to understand our place in that massive, beautiful cycle. If this perspective changed the way you look at your own journey, consider joining us for more of these deep dives into the mysteries of the human experience. We explore the things that science is only just beginning to understand. Subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on our next investigation into the hidden corners of reality. What part of the biological afterlife surprised you the most? Was it the brain's final surge, or the 1,000 genes that turn on after the heart stops? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. You've spent your whole life worrying about the end, but the truth is, you've already survived the death of trillions of your own cells every single year. You are a master of dying and being reborn in small ways every day. When the big one finally comes, your body already knows exactly what to do. It has been practicing for this since the moment you were conceived. You aren't going into the dark, you are going back into the system that built you. And you can't be lost in a system where everything is recycled. Death is just the moment the universe finally calls in its debts, and it's a debt you should be proud to pay. You have been a living, breathing part of the world, and now you get to be everything else. The scale doesn't matter, and the 21 grams are irrelevant. You aren't leaving, you're just spreading out. You've been terrified of a shadow that's actually your own reflection. Stop checking the clock, because the only thing that actually ends is your perspective, not your existence.